morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome all. Everyone is welcome. Come on in and get your seats. And it is in the 11 o'clock hour, and we're so thrilled you're here and healthy and ready to learn and probably be entertained if we know anything about Jean's messages, right? So I picked this song for our gathering music because it speaks of those who have made a difference in this world, even though they're no longer living. They still impact us with their messages from age to age. I noticed it's by Benjamin. From age to age, how grandly we rise, the prophet souls in line. Above the passing centuries, like beacon lights they shine, like beacon lights they shine. They witness to one heritage, one spirit's quickening breath, one widening reign from age to age, of freedom and of faith, of freedom and of faith. Their kindling power, our souls confess, though dead they speak today. How great the cloud of witnesses encompassing our way, encompassing our way. Through every race, through every gender line, one song shall yet be heard. Move onward in thy course sublime, our everlasting word, our everlasting word, our everlasting word.
Thank you, Jory. That was gorgeous. Dear ones, we arrive in this place where all we have to do is breathe. We don't have to impress or convince or win over. We don't have to know the words. It's okay we didn't read the book or pass that class or carry that title or meet that mark. We don't have to be anything but who we are. And here we rest in essence together. And to move into this communal rest. In order to do that, we lay down our burdens, our longing, our craving, our unmet need, our error, our regret, our sudden disappointment, our anxiety, our shame, our sheer exhaustion, our bewilderment, our bafflement, and our burgeoning terror. All of this we lay down together today. And as we do this, may we be filled instead with presence. May we feel held in the comfort of our community. May we discover new compassion for ourselves and for others. May we meet this moment with gentleness, ease, and gratitude for this air we breathe together, for these questions we ask together, for the justice we seek together, for the songs we sing together. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Fayetteville. My name is Reverend Renee Jansky, and I am lucky and grateful to be your minister and music director. Unitarian Universalism is a tradition open to all people, whether religious or non-religious. We UUs have 7 core values at the heart of our belief system: justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, generosity, and at the heart and center of everything is love. Love, which is the most important of everything we do here at Unitarian Universalist churches. We respect our connections to each other, to all of life, and to the precious universe of which we are a part. We welcome you at this very moment, whoever you are, whoever you love, however you're feeling, you are welcome here. For those of you joining us online, welcome, welcome to you. Visitors, we are incredibly happy to see you today. Welcome home. We would like to encourage you to hang out after service for good conversation and some coffee. Members, I would ask that you greet our newcomers and make them feel welcome as we grow our circle wider. For those of you visiting us, you'll find visitor information card in the seat back in front of you, and we would love for you to fill that. You know what, brother, I stole yours, but there should be one in the seat back right over there. Yes. So Fawn will, our beloved admin Fawn, she will put you on the weekly email if you would like it. We don't spam you. It's just kind of a list of what's going on in the week ahead. And Facebook, dear ones, you can put your name and email in the chat, and we will get you registered as well. If you are new, and if you are not new, please check out our website, which is ever-changing, at uufayetteville.org for more information about us. Later in our service, we'll have a time where you're invited to come forward and drop a stone in the bowl of water, symbolizing your joy, concern, or milestone. And if you have one you'd like to share, we invite you to fill out one of the yellow cards that you'll find in the seat back in front of you. And there's a place to indicate whether you want that to be shared publicly with the congregation or just with leadership. And Facebook, dear ones, you can put that into the chat as well, but just know that will be public. If you'd have a need for hearing assistance, our AV Tech David, who I adore so much, can help you with that. Children are 100% always welcome in our service, and there's a staffed nursery downstairs if you prefer. Please remember to silence your cell phones as we enter into the service. They will not match with the key of our opening hymn. And I'm super excited that Jean Vinzant is preaching for us today. I am so excited about that. But before we get to Jean, I would invite David and Caroline to light our chalice this morning.
Please join me in saying these words as David lights the chalice. Love is the spirit of this community, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and truth, and to help one another. Thus do we covenant together.
And for our opening hymn, please rise in body or spirit as you are able, and we will sing, "Come, Come, Whoever You Are." The words to this hymn are from Rumi.
Sing it again. Sing it again. Last line. Last time. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Jory. Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection. A spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified. A caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment to reflect on our joys, milestones, and sorrows and acknowledge the beautiful support of this community. If you would like, you may come forward and release a stone in the water. And if you filled out a yellow joys or concerns card, you may bring that to me. And now is the time you may come forward. Jory, will you offer us some music? Jory. David, are there any joys and concerns on Facebook this morning?
Yeah, we've got a couple. Joy from me, I spent a weekend at the OWL Facilitator training with the UU Fellowship of Raleigh, and now Fayetteville has 4 more OWL Facilitators for grades 6 to 9.
Yay!
Oh, as Joy, Bestie, and I took time for something fun yesterday.
That's right. We Pokemon'd around the square. It was great. Oh, thank you for that. Jean, before you sit down, will you go ahead and drop some more stones for the joys and concerns which might not have been mentioned today? And maybe also a few more for the joys and concerns that we're going to run into this weekend before we see each other again. In our fellowship, we don't pray a lot. And prayer definitely looks different to one of us from the other of us from the other of us. We each pray in our own way. For some, it looks like meditation. For some, it just looks like quieting the mind. And for some, it's a prayer to a higher power of some sort. We're going to take a moment and pray today, each in our own way. To the highest spirit of all our aspirations, to that which grounds us and uplifts us, to that which transcends us, and to the sense of community which we create, we come in prayer today. This morning in UU congregations all over the world and here at UUFF, we've dropped our stones and shared ourselves together in an effort to live into, as best we can, what we profess about placing love at the center of all we do. What a magnificent challenge. We are currently living in times baiting us not to love. The social and political atmosphere in which we travel insidiously tempts us to find fault, place blame, point fingers, and increase that which can tear us apart. And yet, we practice a faith, often imperfectly, because after all, we are human. But we continue to practice a faith where we are called to answer the question, what is the most loving thing I can do right now? What an outstanding challenge. What an unbelievably vital attempt. What an incredibly needed beacon for the future of us all. So in our gathering today to support each other in living this mission, may the light of our flaming chalice breathe life and love into our beloved congregation and into ourselves, who by the very nature of this calling have this great and wonderful opportunity to live into love in these days filled with struggles and so much possibility. May it be so. Dear ones, we have a lot of work to do. And I'm afraid there's going to be more to do before we get to rest. I want to thank you for your financial contribution to this fellowship. Each year, this fellowship gives a portion of our money to the larger governing body of Unitarian Universalist congregations. This body, called the UUA, is doing incredibly important work to see to the safety and security of people in marginalized communities. We are lucky to be a part of this organization. We at UUFF also hope to bring safety and security to our local folks that are suffering because of fascism and hate crimes perpetrated by our very own government. It will take all of us to do what we can. We put our backs into it. We put our hearts into it. and we put our wallets into it. When you give to us at UUFF, I assure you, your money is used for good. Ushers, we can now take up the offering. Jory, will you offer us some more lovely music? Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Jory. Today is Share the Plate. Share the plate for what's happening next week. Next week is Action Sunday, and we are packing bags for the unhoused. Everything that you give today, unless you earmark it for something else, will go towards packing 100 care packages for the unhoused in our area. This is a significant problem in Northwest Arkansas, and we, as social justice is our prayer, we hope to do something about it. And I know 100 care packages can't do much, but it'll do something. And so I encourage you to give generously. Thank you.
The highest member of my collection of bobbleheads is joining us today. Here we go. All right. So thank you for being here, and I hope for some of you, there may be nothing new here. For some of you, maybe a refresher, and for some of you, maybe brand new things about one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin. How can you not love Benjamin Franklin? I'm pretty sure he would win the award for most lovable founding father. Although he was more like a grandfather. He was a generation older than Washington and Jefferson and Adams. The other founding fathers often seem distant and aloof, but Franklin, he's somebody you could have fun with. I feel like of all the founders, if they came back alive now, which would be a little scary, but I feel like Franklin would be the quickest to adapt and not be shocked or surprised, but he would want to know details. How does that work? And why did it take you so long to come up with that? He had a sharp sense of humor, but never at the expense of others. He enjoyed a good time. He enjoyed fine food and wine. He liked being around women. He enjoyed good music. Beyond that, he had an enormous and almost totally positive effect, I would say, on this country. He was the quintessential American. And though he was alive during the Great Awakening, much more influenced by another movement called the Enlightenment, the focus on reason and science and progress. He pursued what many considered the American dream of financial success, but once he had reached a level of success, he essentially retired from his job and started doing things for others. He never called himself a Unitarian, but I feel like we are justified in claiming him as a fellow traveler. And this morning I'd like us to look at his life and identify some lessons, some things perhaps we could learn from him. Born in Boston, 1706, the 15th of 17 children. His father, by the way, was married twice, but most of those came from one woman as well. He was actually the 10th son, which is why his father thought Benjamin Franklin should be a minister. The tithe, the 10th. He was disabused of that notion, though, pretty early when Benjamin Franklin, as a child, said, "Father, why must we pray over every meal? Couldn't we just as well go into the pantry and pray once for everything?" His dad, "Yeah, you're not for the ministry, my boy." And you have to remember, this is Boston, 1706. This is only 14 years after the Salem witch trials had occurred very nearby to Boston. Massachusetts was very different than from today. It was a very rigid, strict place, still really under Puritan, almost a theocracy. And so it's probably a good thing that he ran away to Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, a much more tolerant city dominated by Quakers, who were pretty much cool with everybody as long as you left each other alone. And printing was the business. He had been a printer's apprentice to his brother, didn't like the way his brother treated him, ran away, and pretty soon began working as a printer there and purchased a brand new and almost bankrupt newspaper called the Pennsylvania Gazette, which he turned into the most successful newspaper in the colonies, sort of a media empire. He even franchised other newspapers in other cities. The Pennsylvania Gazette, why did they make their S's like F's sometimes? They just did. We just have to accept that. He, in this newspaper, printed what is believed to be the first political cartoon in America. Some argue the first in the world. That's a more debatable proposition. This later became a representation used during the Revolution. At the time, he was just saying that the colonies should work together more, which other colonists rejected that idea, by the way, at the time. Where he really made his money, though, was in publishing an annual book called Poor Richard's Almanac, Poor Richard being his username, his pseudonym. And almanacs were very popular. Farmers' almanacs still exist, but they predicted the weather for the coming year. A little bit ridiculous, but talked about when the full moon was going to occur and the tides and things like this. All sorts of useful information. The lunations, eclipses, judgment of the weather, planets, when the planets were going to be where. And he included something that a lot of the other almanacs didn't, kind of as filler. Little wise sayings, aphorisms, that were often very humorous, but also very practical. And this became an annual bestseller. The key to the almanac is you had to have a new one every year. So he was able to sell these again and again with slight modifications. Most of these aphorisms or wise sayings he did not invent, contrary to popular belief. He collected them. He invented some of them, but most of them he heard. He had a little notebook he would write down. And many of these still endure today. We'll see how many we know. A penny saved is a penny earned. Oh, very good. Time is money. A lot of his aphorisms have to do with time or money, so that's a really good one. In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. There you go. Death and taxes. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Now, did he always live by these aphorisms? He did not. There's the public Benjamin Franklin, and then the way he acted on his own. He often liked to stay up late playing chess and sleep in But he's presenting, as a very wise, frugal person. It is appropriate, all of his stuff about money, it's appropriate he's on the $100 bill, the Benjamin, as the kids call it. He, a couple of his other sayings, he said, 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. And another one, he said, there are 2 things that stink after 3 days, fish and visitors. Or company, I think maybe is what he said. And this is one of his sayings that seems applicable today. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Well, what a lot of people know him best for is his experiment with electricity and flying a kite in a thunderstorm. Do not do this. He took some safety precautions himself. And by the way, there's some debate over whether he even actually did this. I think he did. But others replicated it later, and sadly, some scientists in Europe were electrocuted trying to replicate this. But he had made so much money as a printer, at the age of about 42, he essentially retired and became a scientist and inventor. And he did a lot with electricity. As I have to tell my students, he did not invent electricity. Electricity has always existed. But he discovered certain properties of it, including the fact that lightning was composed of electricity. They did a lot of experiments back then. They would generate static electricity, kind of like maybe with rubbing a balloon against your hair. He is the first person to use these terms in relation to electricity: positive and negative, current, and the word battery. A group of these, they were called Leyden jars, were lined up, and he said, that looks like a battery of cannons. And that became the word battery. And also the first to talk about grounding electricity. He was very interested in making practical use of his ideas and not just theoretical. And so he came up with something called the lightning rod, a metal spike essentially to put on tall buildings to attract the electrical energy, and then a wire. You can't see it very well in this picture, but from that building there's a wire that runs down into the ground to ground the electricity. Buildings catching fire from lightning, and also ships. This was a big concern. He was initially criticized by many religious people, saying, how dare you play God? If God wants to strike a building with lightning, well, that's his business. For thousands of years, people saw lightning as coming from the gods or God. Franklin said, fine, you don't have to buy one. Within a few years, they all had one on their church steeples. Incidentally, he never patented any of his inventions. He said they're just for the benefit of humanity. Swim fins at age 11. Which reminds me of the old joke of the dad who told his son he thought wasn't working hard, son, do you know what Abraham Lincoln was doing at your age? And the son respectfully said, Father, I don't, but I know what he was doing at your age. So before all the 11-year-olds feel too guilty for not inventing swim fins, he invented an odometer there in the top right. So this was used on wagons, and every turn of the wagon wheel would click, and then it would add up. He was postmaster for a while, and he needed to know the exact mileage between cities. The first to chart and name the Gulf Stream. Sailors had talked about that it was always quicker sailing east than west, and he figured out why and used a string and a thermometer to measure the warmth, the temperature of the sea. He invented bifocals, not spectacles, those were around, but the idea of putting together 2 pieces of glass, which my optometrist says when you turn 45, almost everybody needs bifocals, or some of us trifocals or progressive lenses, right? The Franklin stove is a way to produce more heat and less smoke. Instead of the heat going up the chimney, let it radiate through the metal. That's the one he could have made a lot of money off of. And he observed some people, this was when he was in England, making music using crystal glasses filled with different amounts of water and rubbing their fingers, and he came up with an instrument. Mozart actually wrote a piece for Franklin's glass harmonica, as he called it. Now, this is a good point to bring up Mark Twain. Mark Twain had a theory that Benjamin Franklin never really existed, and that he was invented by cruel parents to torture their children with things like, "Why can't you be more like Benjamin Franklin?" These are quotes from Mark Twain. He wrote an essay on this. "His simplest acts were contrived with a view to their being held up for the emulation of boys forever, boys who might otherwise have been happy, with a malevolence which is without parallel in history. He would work all day and then sit up nights and let on to be studying algebra by the light of a smoldering fire, so that all other boys might have to do that also, or else have Benjamin Franklin thrown up to them." And he came up with his own aphorism in contrast to Benjamin Franklin: "Never put off till tomorrow what you can do day after tomorrow just as well." So Benjamin Franklin, like, come on. Was this guy even for real? Well, having invented everything he could think of, the last phase of his life was dedicated to being a statesman, a diplomat, not really a politician as such, although he held a few political offices. He served as, initially he was Pennsylvania's colonial representative, but other colonies hired him to represent them. He tried to explain to the British why the colonists didn't like taxation without representation. He even suggested they added a few parliamentary members to represent the colonies. They laughed at that as ridiculous. He came home just in time to take part in giving Jefferson some grammar tips and helping draft and sign the Declaration of Independence. This is one of the quotes he may have said. It's kind of legendary. Immediately after signing, "We must all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately." Almost immediately after signing the Declaration of Independence, he was chosen to be sent to France as representative of the colonies, with the sole mission of getting France to become our ally, to support the now United States of America, a mission in which he succeeded through charm, helped also by some colonial military victories, but a lot of it through the force of his personality, and also the fact that the French hated the British anyway, so they just didn't need too much of an excuse. France will join us, becoming our first and oldest allies. He became a celebrity in France and throughout Europe. Many people made medallions of him and hung up pictures of him in their homes. He was popular for being popular. They called him Dr. Franklin. He didn't really have a doctorate. He had 2 years of formal education. But because of his electricity experiments, they decided he deserved to be called doctor. This beaver skin or beaver fur hat he wore, he never wore it in the United States. But when he went to Europe, he really played up this image of kind of the hayseed from the backwoods of America who just became a genius suddenly. And they expected him to wear it, so he did. He was an influencer, you might say. Commemorated in this stamp as well. When the war ended, incidentally, most historians think we would not have won without the help of the French, who provided most of the gunpowder and loaned us their navy at a critical moment, the Battle of Yorktown. Franklin, though, was part of the delegation that signed the treaty ending the war with Britain, recognizing our independence. I love this painting, by the way. The British negotiators were to be on the right side of the painting and the Americans on the left, and the British refused to have their portraits painted. They were so humiliated and ashamed. So that's why the artist just left that side kind of blurry. Franklin, though, there in the very middle, by the way, to his right is his grandson, Temple Franklin. It was bring your grandson to a treaty day, and he was really there just as an intern and took notes. And this is John Adams, by the way, seated to the left. So he comes back and is involved in the creation of the Constitution. There he is. He was in his 80s at this point, pretty much deaf, suffering from gout, slept through many of the proceedings, but people were just thrilled that he was there. His presence kind of, gave it a stamp of approval. He's the only person, by the way, to have signed the Declaration of Independence, the Treaty of Paris, and the Constitution. Now, let's talk about his religious views. He was not a highly religious man. He called himself a deist, which many of the founding fathers did, coming from the word deus, God. They believed in God, but a somewhat distant God who perhaps had created the world and then stepped back. Some called the clockmaker God. The philosopher Spinoza also had that view, and Einstein as well, something close to that. I like to think of it, for my students today, I tell them it's sort of like the Force in Star Wars. A very impersonal, there's something holding this together, but in terms of praying to this being and asking for specific things or feeling like you're being watched over, no, Franklin didn't go for that. This is something he wrote. Sunday being my studying day, I never was without some religious principles. I never doubted, for instance, the existence of the deity, that he made the world and governed it by his providence, that the most acceptable service of God was the doing good to man, that our souls are immortal and that all crime will be punished and virtue rewarded either here or hereafter. And that's about the extent of his beliefs. Later in life, in fact, this was a month before he died. He was 84 years old. He received a letter from Ezra Stiles, who was the president of, I believe it was Yale. Check my notes here. That's right. A minister and the president of Yale University. Of course, you have to remember Harvard, Yale, Princeton, these were all religious schools, preacher training schools in the early days. Ezra Stiles was very concerned about Benjamin Franklin's soul. And he said, I've heard things that you're a deist, that you're not a Christian, and he wrote trying to convert him. And this was Franklin's reply, written a month before his death. As to Jesus, I think his system of morals and his religion the best the world ever saw or is likely to see. But I apprehend it has received various corrupting changes. And I have some doubts as to his divinity, though it is a question I do not dogmatize upon, having never studied it. I think he's not exactly telling the truth there. I think he did study it. And think it needless to busy myself with it now when I expect soon an opportunity of knowing the truth with less trouble. So he was very polite in saying, thanks, no thanks. Instead of adopting any sort of dogmatic views or debating religion, he identified 13 virtues and decided he would work on himself. Temperance, and again, he did not necessarily follow these always. Silence, he definitely not so good on that one. Order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, chastity, tranquility, and humility. By the way, I noticed just before the service, this marble-like candle thing says tranquility on it. These are very similar to a lot of our values. I don't know, cleanliness didn't make it into our principles, but many of these relate in one way or another. And he came up with a chart to work on these. By the way, he's the first person we know of to talk about having a list of pros and cons, a decision kind of chart. But he liked charts, and so these are the 13 virtues, and he would judge himself. He woke every morning, he tells us in his autobiography, with the question, what good can I do today? But he would mark himself if he had violated silence. Got violated a lot there. But if he felt he had violated, and initially he worked a week on each virtue, and he would cycle through 4 times in a year. But then he just started doing them all every week. He also said he struggled with humility quite a bit, but he found if he added just the phrase, I think, or in my opinion, to the beginning of sentences, people perceived him as being very humble, even though he was saying the same thing. So I want to leave you with 4 lessons from the life of Benjamin Franklin that we might want to apply. One is to focus on deeds, not creeds. As I said, he saw little value in arguing over theology. He attended a lot of churches in his lifetime, more just as a scientific observer. And he talks about how much he did not enjoy sermons that were just sort of splitting hairs over theology or talking about how someone else's theology was wrong. The sermons he said he enjoyed were the practical ones. How is this something that will make me better or make others better? And he said this, the scriptures assure me that on the last day we shall not be examined on what we believed, but on what we did. Our entrance to heaven will not be because we kneeled and said, Lord, Lord, but because we did some good for our fellow creatures. And he got that right out of Matthew chapter 25. Second lesson is to work with like-minded people to achieve good. He, early in life in Philadelphia, formed something, Junto, and I think they pronounced it junto, but if you know any Spanish, junto, it comes from the Latin, another English variant would be join, but the idea of people coming together, junto means together in Spanish, and they met every week, and it wasn't a committee of just talking, it was a committee of doing. What good can we do? And some of the good that this group helped accomplish, the first volunteer fire department, perhaps in the world, the first subscription library in America, sort of a public library, you did have to pay a fee, but then you could borrow books. The first learned society, the philosophical, so this plaque here, the American Philosophical Society, established 1743. The first liberal arts school, the University of Pennsylvania. There were other schools and universities, but they were all religious in nature. And so he set up the first secular public university in America. It didn't start as a university, but it became the University of Pennsylvania. The first public hospital, with an asterisk, and that's because Bellevue Hospital in New York City, they claim to be the first, so there's a little dispute there, depending on how you define certain things. And to build that hospital, he is the first person we know of in history to use the notion of matching funds, or a matching grant, which is used all the time now by our local public radio and by lots of people. He asked the state of Pennsylvania, would you put up half the money for this if I can raise the other half? And they said, okay, we'll do that. And thus that notion was born. Number 3 lesson, you can disagree with others and still respect them. Still be friends with them. Another lesson we need to relearn perhaps. And a good example of this is the minister, George Whitefield, of the Great Awakening. He and Franklin were friends. Whitefield always trying to convert Franklin, Franklin kind of brushing him off. Whitefield came and gave this enormous, it was an outdoor sermon to an enormous gathering. Franklin, instead of listening carefully to the sermon, decided this would be a good scientific opportunity to measure how far the human voice could travel. And so he took a certain area and counted the number of people, and then he stepped off the area of the entire crowd to get a crowd estimate. And he estimated the crowd at 30,000, by the way, that was listening to this, probably wondering why this guy's walking around. Benjamin Franklin also would contribute to any church, any denomination, a Jewish congregation, it didn't matter, who asked him for money, because he figured this is probably good for the community. And here his name is on a list pledging £5, worth $800+ today, in support of a synagogue. They were raising money for the people of the Hebrew Society in the city of Philadelphia. He also contributed to building a non-denominational auditorium, and he wrote that anyone could use it, even what he called Mohammedans, what we would call Muslims. He said could use this if they want to. And the fourth and final lesson, don't be afraid to change your mind. And a couple of good examples. Early, as a young adult, he was a skeptic of inoculation, which is a procedure to vaccines. Inoculation, the difference is inoculation actually gave you the disease, a mild form of it. And smallpox, there was a big debate in the 1700s over getting inoculated for smallpox. And Franklin initially was skeptical, and he did not have his son Francis inoculated, who was 4 years old and sadly died of the smallpox because he was not inoculated. Franklin changed his mind and became a big promoter. I think he would support vaccines today. He also went from being an enslaver. At one point, he owned 6 human beings. Then it reduced it to 1, and finally decided slavery was wrong. Now, he could have come to this decision earlier in life. He was about 80 when he decided, and he joined and became president of the Philadelphia Abolition Society. In fact, his last public act was to present a petition to Congress asking for the national abolition of slavery in 1789, I believe. While he did many great things, he wasn't perfect. Slavery being one example, he was a bit slow. He is the only founding father who took a clear, unambiguous anti-slavery stance. Public. But he was a little slow getting there. Many others were ahead of him in Pennsylvania. And he wasn't a great husband or father. Which I might personally say was the most important thing he should have been doing instead of all the inventions, but he spent a lot of time away from his family in England or France, some of it doing his duty, some of it gallivanting about. His wife wrote these letters, they're so sad to read, begging him to come home. She wrote one, she was in her final illness, and said, "Would you please come home and visit me? I want to see you one last time." And he wrote back, "Maybe," and delayed until she died. As a father, he had 2 children that survived, a son, William Franklin, from a woman prior to his marriage, and a daughter. And Franklin and his son became estranged. His son was a loyalist and remained a loyalist, and Franklin hated him for that and never forgave him, even when the war was over and his son tried to reconnect. Benjamin Franklin refused. He just could not let go of that. So that's a sad aspect of his life. Still, there are many good things we can and should emulate. This, you can tell, a few years ago for me there. Franklin hasn't aged a day, but I'll leave you with this quote. If you would not be forgotten as soon as you are dead and rotten, either write things worth reading or do things worth the writing. Thank you.
Please join me in singing just the first verse of This Land Is Your Land. Thank you, Gene. We learned so much. And so let's sing it a couple times, and then thanks for being here, and we'll do some coffee hour. So 1, 2, 3. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Thank you so much. We have some announcements.
We're going to extinguish the chalice.
We are going to extinguish the chalice.
Please say these words with me as David extinguishes our flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thanks, y'all. Just to say, we don't always sing things like This Land Is Your Land. I understand that it is problematic for some, but Woody Guthrie was a huge supporter of UUism, and so sometimes we pull that one out. Okay, that's it. Some sending music from Jory. See y'all next week.
Y'all, here's a verse for our town to the tune of This Land Is Your Land. On the square of the city, by the old main tower,